live from Las Vegas. Please give a warm welcome to members of the cast of Star Trek Enterprise, starting with Dominic Keating. Dominic, you out there? You back there? Dominic Keating. Hi, Dominic. Trinneer, is Connor back there? Or is he down in engineering? Connor. Also joining us today, Gary Graham. Gary, are you out there? Oh, no, John, get away. Gary, is Gary out there? Gary, come on. Now, here we go. Gary Graham, everybody. And now, John, you may come out. John Billingsley, everybody. Woo.
Was I on any of the clips? All right, the last one.
How are you guys doing? Welcome back. I can't believe it's been a year since our last reunion.
It was last year.
Every time I get together with you guys,
16 now.
you take 10 years out of my life.
It's killing me every time I see you.
And I want to welcome Gary for the first time. I think this is the first time I get to moderate with Gary joining us.
Gary! Graham is in the house!
Well, the latest and the greatest is that we have a new Star Trek show coming up very soon.
Yes, we do.
Again, the excitement is building up. Last time,
The audience is going crazy.
you guys are excited. New Star Trek show. Nick
Being awake.
You only have 7 minutes. Talk about us.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Joan. I was going to say that last time we got a new show, it was you guys. It was your characters. It was you guys joining the Star Trek family. So I wanted, before we go into all
Light years ago now.
No, 15 years ago. 15.
Like I say, light years.
Before we go into all the other craziness we're going to be talking about, I wanted to get your thoughts on those early days and how you felt coming into Star Trek, knowing that you were going to, join into this group, and you weren't just getting an acting gig, Here you are, 15 years later, still talking about these characters. People love you guys. You're still part of this.
Look at this room. It's amazing. Thank you guys for coming out. God bless you all.
Before I answer that, do we get to do carpool karaoke with you?
No.
That would be awesome.
All right. We didn't plan for that this year. Maybe for the for next.
Come on, let's go for a run around town.
Yeah.
In the Sclade.
There's a couple of Boston songs I want to sing.
Yeah, we knew when we got the job. I think John and I got cast on the same day, and we went for a little celebratory coffee. And I remember him ringing his cell phones had only been just gone live, and he rang his wife Bonnie, and I heard him just go, "How'd it go?" And he just go, "Da, da, 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 da." She's like,
And we were told, this was on the QT, we were told by Rick Berman as we were leaving the audition that we got it, but we weren't allowed to tell anybody. And I think I saw Dominic make 20 phone calls.
I called everybody. I didn't hear the "you can't tell anyone" bit.
Yeah.
So I'm on the phone, I'm calling my manager, my girlfriend, my manager's girlfriend.
Yellow press.
I was just calling, he goes, "Will you accept the other call on the line?" Yeah, hell yeah. It was Ron Sermer, the casting director, who was already in his 5th cigarette since the casting. "Dominic, it's Ron Sermer. Listen." I went, "Ron, hello, me, hey, great." We were just about to go up and get the coffee. He goes, "Listen, you haven't told anyone, have you?"
No.
What about you? What was that like?
Oh, mine was horrible.
They made him put the blue Starfleet knickers on at the 3rd audition.
They made me
Rub himself in the KY oil.
No, I came that way. They made me wait a week after my audition, and because they had said that I hadn't shown enough awe about the grandiose quality of the Enterprise ship. And I was like, well, listen, I'll go back in there and all over the room. I mean, they didn't want to see me again. So I thought that, and apparently it wasn't over yet. They were still deciding. I think 3 or 4 days into this, I hightailed it down to Mexico and drowned my sorrows that I thought were going to be in tequila for 3 days at La Fonda Inn, just above Ensenada. And
You always roll in such style, don't you?
60 bucks a night and homemade tortillas.
The good old days.
Yeah. And then I came
Back
back.
there again last summer, huh?
And then I came back, and my manager called, talked to Junie Lowry Johnson, the other casting person on it. And she was like, Ross, you know I can't tell you what they're going to do. They only have a week, by the way, SAG rules. And it was over a week. And she goes, you know I can't tell you, Ross, but you'll sleep well tonight. And I was like, what does that mean? When do I sleep well tonight? I'm not going to sleep at all. So sure enough, the next morning they called up and offered me the job and said that you better show a lot more awe in this first season. They didn't say that. Can you imagine? We're going to hire you with a contingency. Be better.
Is that why? Is that why?
Yes, that's why. That's why.
I thought
That's why I was in my underwear all
that
the time.
first decontamination scene was brimming with awe. You couldn't have got any more awe in that Start My Chickens.
We're not going to make the day with Connor showing all this awe.
That's right. Someone get some paint thinner.
They changed. Your character had a different name back then.
Yes, I was originally Spike.
That's right.
Now I'll tell you a funny story, briefly as I can, but so we had these things called the TSAs, I believe, and we had the advertising.
Not for you.
The upfronts.
The upfronts.
That was New York.
You know, it was TSAs when all of the advertising people would come in and they'd give them a big party at Paramount. Well, me,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
my wife, John, and Bonnie,
You
his
were
wife,
yeah, you did a bad thing.
got loaded.
Loaded.
Free alcohol, free food. We're actors. So I get the bright idea that, hey, you know what?
Nothing else to do.
They're not going to miss about 4 bottles. Let's take them. I hand John like a bottle of Jim Beam and brandy, and I grab.
We were the last people at a 1,000-person party.
Yeah.
Clinking out the door.
Seriously.
Clink, clink, clink.
So I get home, and I'm like, that was a great idea. The next day we had to spend the 12 hours in a now defunct sanitation building out on the coast. Smelled like poo. Now I wasn't feeling very good. Then I get home, and my wife calls me. She picked on the pager. You're gonna call her Rick Berman. What? I think. Oh, he knows. And I'm fired.
You took that Calypso rum!
And so I'm panicked all the way home, thinking literally the best opportunity of my professional life is over because I've got 4 bottles of booze sitting on my counter, staring back at me.
Yeah, stamped with Paramount.
So he calls up and he's like, hey buddy. And I'm like, okay, that's better. He goes, I just wanted to tell you, we're changing your name. And I literally dropped to my knees and was like, we're changing it from Spike, which I was like, good. Because UPN already had a Spike on Buffy. And you can't have 2 Spikes.
On the same network.
Yeah.
No, it's SAG rules.
Yeah, really. They made a mistake. So he's like, so we're gonna name you Trip. And I was like, I don't care, man. Awesome, great. I still have the job. It's not about tequila. Call me Larry. Call me whatever you want. But I can come to work on Monday.
Gary, what was your impression of this new cast, this new group of actors? You'd been on Voyager. If there's any Alien Nation fans, you know Gary. So you got to join in from the very beginning in Broken Bow, the 2-hour movie of the week that launched the show. How much did you know of the overall story arc and your involvement, and what was your impression of this new group of actors that was taking over this?
What a
new
wonderful, multifaceted question that I'm now
Like
going
3
to try to
questions in
remember
one.
so I can answer it.
We're here though, by the way, Gary.
I know.
We can hear you.
Feel free to say whatever you want about the women.
Truthfully,
Let's talk
exactly the
about
same.
stealing bottles of booze again.
You thief.
I had very little knowledge about the franchise. In fact, when I was cast in this, I'd read for Star Trek of some incarnation about 9 or 10 times prior, and seemed to keep calling me back. I thought, what is the Twilight Zone of the 50s, 60s, where every actor just gets cranked? Would you want a Chinese accent? Well, I had no idea, so I just took a stab at it, went in there, got the job, and said, oh, great, okay, that's who this Vulcan is, okay. But I knew nothing about Vulcans, the background and all that. And so I got dressed, got makeup, and showed up on the set, and I was only hired for the pilot. And I thought, if I want to come back, if this show goes, I want to come back and I want to be a worthy adversary to Archer. I don't want to just be an impediment. I want to be a stick in the mud, concrete wall you can't get through. So I determined to be as subtly the biggest prick I could possibly be. And my mother's always said that works out good for me.
But once again, John Billingsley beat you. 14 and 40.
I know, it's the battle of the pricks is really what our relationship
Yeah, I wondered what your deal was.
Absolutely, it's just. But I showed up and Rick Berman says, "You look like a Vulcan." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. Who am I? Because I don't know anything about Vulcans. I thought this was going to be the easiest job ever. Oh, they have no emotion, so you're just I'm just Mr. Robot Man. I don't know. I had no idea." And then he says, "Let's walk. Let's walk." So we did a walk and talk. We're 15 minutes away from shooting my first scene, and he told me about the history and the volcanic nature of their emotions and how they had to learn that Zen approach to harnessing these emotions and controlling themselves lest they completely goes extinct. I said, "Oh wow! I should have probably done my homework before I went in for the audition." But so
at lunch,
it seemed to work out all right. And in that one scene that we shot, there's this one point where I get furious with Archer, and instead of containing I raise my voice, and everybody turns at me. It's very Vulcanish of me. And Archer says, "Raising your voice to make a point. You have been on Earth too long." And I thought, that's the key to the character. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Seemed to have worked out all right. I was very happy with Manny Cotto coming on last season. He had a particular penchant for Vulcans, I'm happy to say. And he gave the ambassador plenty to do, and really brought a nice arc where at once I hated the humans, and then I tolerated them, and eventually got to a point where I would be willing to sacrifice my life in the cause of the Federation. So I was happy to do it, and live long and prosper.
the commentaries for the Blu-ray, for the episodes, that you still remember the first moment on the bridge for you? Was that the first line you...
First shot, it was a quick pop. I did the first shot of the pilot, and it was a quick pop of Malcolm doing some button pushing. And, I remember taking a step.
You got better at that.
I did get better at that, yeah.
You never got to do that again.
Well, I learned quickly, if Connor's ever on the bridge, never let him be in a two-shot with you.
I'll drop forks and they'll do anything.
But it was a momentous moment, yes, taking that step up onto the bridge and thinking, wow, here we go. Whoosh.
I thought the bridge thing, I thought, awesome, I'm the engineer. I don't have to go on the bridge. I'm not going to have bridge days. You know, I'll have days off because they're all on the bridge. Like, no, you go stand there. It's like, but there's nothing here.
Yeah, I wouldn't let him stand anywhere near me.
You stand there.
They needed you, Connor. They needed your expertise.
Yeah.
He did, he felt like a sausage at a...
They needed his awe.
Doctor didn't have to go on the bridge. I have a little song that you probably all heard, but I always like to sing it because I didn't really have to work that hard. My song was Day Off, Day Off, 6 days off and the check still comes.
I realized you could play it.
drinking beer, sitting in the sun.
Did you guys, once the pilot aired, did any of you guys go on the internet right away and look up the fan?
What internet?
Yeah, well, no, there was some internet back then.
Wasn't
We had
it?
the internet.
There
We
was.
didn't have Twitter. And,
There was,
I don't know, we have Facebook. We didn't have Facebook back then.
CS,
But AOL. We had the forums. We had the websites where you could look up.
I will be honest, I mean, I am so not the internet person in these last 10 years, but back then I did read what were those chat boards of the show when it first got going. I did. Yeah.
I was working.
You were honestly, John and I got the best
I would spend
schedule.
most of my time in Aruba, so they didn't have internet.
We did. We had, honestly, I had so many 5-day weekends. It was fantastic.
Yeah, Dominic would come by, having gone to the beach in Malibu all day
Surfing
long.
all day
and for
long.
some stupid reason, he'd come by the set
Yeah.
to like show up.
Yeah, the tan. Yeah, I think I got pulled into the office actually one time and told you've got to watch the tan, Dominic. You can't be this tan. Yeah.
One of the cool things about getting cast on a Star Trek show, for some of the other members of the groups who had the 7-year run, I know you guys ended after 4, but there's...
Thanks, Roger.
There's, I know, I'm putting salt on the 11-year-old wound, but a lot of the other cast members went on to utilize that opportunity to kind of shadow the directors and get an understanding of that side of the process and maybe move forward with directing careers. Did any of you guys?
Next question.
Yeah, let's move on.
Well, we did, but unfortunately, by the time we might have been eligible to actually do it, the relationship between Mr. Berman and UPN was so ragged by then that they had, the one way they could yank his chain officially was to say no new writers and no new directors without their approval, and so they enforced that, and he wasn't going to go to bat for us.
Two of you were very interested in directing.
I was very, very interested. I put in a lot of man hours in that edit suite, and I hung around a lot of directors on those sets. Yeah, and look,
And the rest of us were all so excited about the possibility of...
and being directed by me. I was like, couldn't wait to get to John's character.
Oh, yeah.
God, he got some notes. He said SOB how to act for once.
Rick, could you write me out of this episode, please?
Yeah, a long night in the sick bay.
We're celebrating 50 years of Star Trek this year.
We are
50! Gene's creation. I wanted to ask you guys. Obviously, Gene wasn't around when you guys were working on the show, but if you guys think about the kind of storytelling that you guys got to tackle, especially in Year 3 with the year-long Cindy War story arc, Season 4 kind of connecting the show more to Gene's story. What do you think Gene would feel about this chapter in the continuing Star Trek series?
not enough chiffon-clad ladies. Not enough chiffon-clad ladies in our version of the show. There could have been more.
You're not allowed to eat those.
That's what I think he thought. Here's the chiffon. Honestly, Kirk's chiffon-clad ladies.
You guys,
I watched the show as a kid growing up. They were my first foray into erotica. Without a doubt.
They were your last foray, too.
it's all downhill from here.
I still got the hearts for Barbara Luna, I tell you.
You should carry on with this. We're just going to wait and listen.
That's it, really.
I have a serious response to that question.
John, do you have a serious response? Let's do this right
I have
now.
a serious response to that question. The third season premiered shortly after 9/11, and Paramount had been asked by the network, and Paramount in turn asked Rick to bump up the threat level and the action-adventure level in the third series. So the third series, as well as being the third season, very much being a direct response in a way, or at least influenced by the current geopolitical events, took some interesting turns. Some of those episodes were terrific. I've always wondered how Gene might have felt about certain of those episodes, and I think that is one of the questions that to me has come up a lot. I won't get into the politics of it, but it is the question that I am asked the most at conventions. A version of your question specifically, what did you think about Season 3 and why? And I don't know if Gene was here what he would have said, you know? I think there were departures from Gene's vision in the third season. I specifically think of an episode in which we stopped just short of endorsing torture, which to my mind was a step too far for him.
The airlock sequence where the captain...
Yeah. Now that's an episode that engendered some debate, but the captain was prepared to throw somebody out of the airlock if he didn't, you know. And to my mind, we stepped a little bit into 24 territory there.
Well, that was the other influence for that season, wasn't it? The one through arc through 26 episodes.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a...
But times change and culture changes, and that's the thing. Star Trek is not monolithic. And that's one of the things that I find most interesting about it, is that over a 50-year arc, each series has had its own very different jumping off point based on where we were as a culture. Some of the similarities that go from show to show, the idea of inclusivity and teamwork and bonding, they draw all the shows together. But the political context, the socio-political context of each show differs depending upon the era it was made in. And I sometimes think we don't talk enough about that.
I agree with you, John. And I think that, and I really believe this, the bottom of my heart, that Gene would have thought that I did have enough awe. and I wouldn't have had to go through that horrible week.
You know, if you showed a little more awe.
Yeah, I think Gene really would have felt it.
How are you spelling awe? Is that O-A-R? Oh. How many awes do you need to row this ship? Never understood anything you people say. You do know that, don't you?
What are some of these storylines for you, John, especially? You're very. We've talked about this on the Blu-rays. You were very opinionated about some of the storylines, and you know, I don't know that you guys got to voice your children all the time to the writers and the producers. But if there had been a year 5, what are the storylines you think the show should have tackled? What were the hopes for your characters personally, for the show overall?
I have no idea. I never really had that much of a relationship with Rick Brannon or the writing staff. I mean, we were friendly, but I didn't really have personal conversations about where the stories might go. I thought some stories for me that were really exceptionally good. For instance, the one where we cloned Trip. I thought that was the best episode we did in 4 years of the show. To my mind, that hit on what makes Star Trek work. It had topicality, it involved everybody in the cast, everybody had a personal stake in what went on. There were high stakes generally for the episode. There was whimsy, there was humor. It didn't take a hard and fast position. It brought up a subject in a way that allowed you to scratch your head about it. I thought that was where the show was at its best. And I think that coming out of the Xindi arc, even though that was a Xindi arc episode, we would have had more opportunity to do shows like that. The Xindi arc, to my mind, locked us into too many rigidities that are imposed by episodic television. One of the things that I think Star Trek has found ways to avoid down the years.
Can we not talk about the Xindi season, please? Because I only had one episode in that season. Just an idea.
Did you play a little trick?
My son took a little trip.
We wanted you to come. We wanted you to come.
And I thank you for that.
If there had been a fifth season,
There had been a fifth year.
if there had been a fifth season, I would have fought strongly for not being dead.
That's so selfish.
Novels? Have I read the
That's
novels?
selfish.
Section 31. You joined.
I've not read the novel. I'm sorry.
You're dead.
Didn't die. You joined Section 31.
You know what? I'm dead.
Hall of Fame.
We fought hard for that death.
Let's talk about the final episode.
Oh yeah, where the hell did that come from?
No, talk about it because it's mostly about me. It's mostly about me, so let's talk about it. Go ahead.
You want to talk about the TV guide quote,
You
John?
had in your...
John, you want to talk about the TV guide quote?
Oh, the TV guide quote. I never said a goddamn negative thing, believe it or not, in any of the things that I ever said. Never quoted negatively. The one time I was trying to stick up for some of my fellow cast members who are not here, who were trashing the final episode by saying, well, you know, I think their argument is that maybe Rick and Brandon didn't emphasize quite enough. Yeah, what the TV guy said is, John Billingsley slams final episode. Just never talk to the press. Of course, the press never wants to talk to me, so that's not too hard.
By the way, if there's any fans who have questions for the members of the Enterprise cast, can they start lining up? And we'll go to that in a moment.
After a commercial break.
After a commercial break, yes.
I just want to say that I'm grateful to be here because I'm not a member of the cast. I'm recurring cast, so I'm just happy to be on the couch. Okay, thank you.
You guys, I mean, if somehow the opportunity came along to revisit these characters, whether it's, I don't know, who knows, TV movies, anything.
Or in Brian Fuller's new show.
Or, yeah, would you...
Brian, you out there?
Yeah. I mean, look, there's parallel universes, there's holodecks, there's all these things, there's a new Star Trek show, there's always a way in the Star Trek universe. How would each of you feel about coming back?
Oh, in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
If the Denobulin didn't have the rubber head, maybe like the Denobulins were like somehow stripped of their head. The makeup chair is not a pleasant place to be always.
How long did it
How many
take?
hours were you
Was it 3 hours?
3 hours.
3 hours.
Hour to take off. Mind you, I only had to work 1 day a week.
Yeah. Forced calls.
Not too bad. They didn't like forced calls on Star Trek.
Ah, that's right. UPN.
First calls if you work more than a certain number of hours, and then they have to bring you back, and you don't get enough turnaround time. You get a certain little lanyard, a little extra fillip in your pay on.
Call it the sofa call.
Free couch, yeah.
It's basically a free
Enough
couch.
to buy the sofa.
It's cheaper to just write you out of the episode, really.
Honor, sign up. You'd come back, or?
Yeah, I'd be cloned, clearly, because I'm dead. I'm not bothered by it, you guys. It's really not that big of a deal, but I'm dead.
You're not dead, I'm telling you.
All right, I'm not dead, I'm just mostly dead.
You can come to in the decontamination scene.
Yeah, I'm like Bobby Ewing in Dallas. I'm like,
You had a twin sister, didn't you? You had a twin sister?
Let's take questions from
No, younger sister.
Let's go over here. First question over here.
Sorry.
Hello. My question is for everyone who wants to weigh in on it, but I was hoping you could clarify a point. I heard differing opinions about the writers, and John partially addressed this. Jolene Blaylock stated once that whenever the actors needed to speak to a writer, they were not really especially available. And then your other cohort, Anthony Montgomery, said that any time that you needed to confer with a writer, they were always available. I was hoping you could offer some insight on that.
Jolene's a big fat liar.
Jolene had the wrong number. She was calling the local Chinese takeaway.
I always had access to them. If it wasn't immediately, it was a callback, or there was never any problem. I have to say that they were, not only were they accessible, hell, they were on set. Like when it was their episode, they were usually there, seeing how it was going.
I would say that that's true for the staff writers. Rick and Brandon weren't necessarily on set a lot, and sometimes the questions had to kind of go up the chain. And you have to understand that sometimes the questions that come up need an answer now. The bigger questions about, hey, I have some question about character arc, or yes, you could always call and get a conversation in when you got a script for the first time. But sometimes on the day, if you had a particular question that needed to get wrestled with, that was not necessarily as easy to pull off.
Yeah, true. There was a time when I was with Archer and T'Pol, and we had crash landed on Andoria, and I was in my full robes, and I thought, well, upcoming we had a firefight with a bunch of rebel Andorians, and there was going to be fisticuffs and climbing around and all that. And they said, well, and we're getting out of the starship, and I just took off my big thick robe and tossed it back in, and the director says, wait, what are you doing? I said, well, obviously this is what a Vulcan would do. It's logical, after all. And I think it took 25, 30 minutes to get the request up the line and back down the line. Yes, that'll be okay. You just take it and toss it in there, and then you're good to go. Oh my God. Yeah. Wow.
That's television a lot. mean, that's frequently what is problematic on television.
Yeah.
The day has to go fast, but there isn't always a guy there to make a final decision as quickly as you want it. That's just, you know.
I was surfing.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, thanks for your question. Let's go over here.
Hi, thank you all for coming out. I'm actually curious to hear how Star Trek has affected your careers. I know that Star Trek, you can generally get typecasted. I know, Connor, you went on to Stargate Atlantis, which was wonderful. But I also know you mentioned your as a break. So I'm curious how it also affected your careers in general. Did you always think you would go into sci-fi, and how it has gone on from there? Did you think you would be a big stage actor?
I mean, it certainly affected my professional life in so much that I'd never spent that much regular time in front of a camera. I'd worked quite a bit, but it was intermittent, and this was definitely a learning curve for me, those years, to get very comfortable around a set, to understand the meat and measure of a set, and just how a scene gets put together, and how it's shot, and really understand that, the workings of that finally, once and for all. So that was very important. The other aspect of it, in terms of, you know, what did it go on to give you? I think, sadly for us, because we were the fourth incarnation of this show in modern times, as it were, you know, other than all you lovely people, our industry didn't really look at this show. So no casting directors particularly were watching Enterprise going, oh, that guy's interesting. Or, so in those respects, we flew under the wire, but the check still came. So, you know, it changed my life entirely, without a doubt, for which I'm eternally grateful.
I'd like to say something on that too. The career ramification of being involved in Star Trek, I didn't notice any special bump or anything, or even pigeonholing or typecasting that happened in my career. But I did notice what happened in my life, in that I was suddenly a part of however small part, of this vast family of very intelligent, very adept, very beautiful people all over the world. And I'm talking about you.
Present company excluded.
I'm talking about you guys. I have never felt so welcome and so energized by my conversation with all of you. And I just want to say thank you to you for creating Star Trek, and thank you to all of you for generating the emotional response and all of that. And just to tag on that, I was in a casting office about 7 years ago or so. And it's after I had done a Voyager episode and started my work on Enterprise. And I bumped into an old buddy of mine he had this look on his face like a beat dog, like actors often do coming out of an audition. Because it only looks easy, but in reality, in the trenches, it's auditioning and going and having to prove yourself over 1,000 times. And even though you built up a body of work, they want to see you with their lines in your mouth. And he said, he looked at me and he said, "How's it been going, man?" I go, "Oh, really good." He goes, "It's really, really tough out there, isn't it?" And I go, "Well, it's always been tough. What have you been doing?" I go, "Well, there's the occasional Star Trek." And he busted up and laughed his ass off in the casting office like I just said the funniest thing. And I didn't know how to take that as a slam, that my career has sagged to the point where I'm doing the occasional Star Trek. And I took umbrage with that. And I said, "Screw you, buddy. You know, yeah, the occasional Star Trek, and damn happy to get the work." To you guys all over the world, you people who love this series like we do, yeah, I do the occasional Star Trek on a good day.
Do we have time for one more, or do we wrap it up? One more? One more. Better be good.
I was just wondering, I've heard that Scott Bakula was a really nice
Lies, lies. Tissue of lies. Where's all this propaganda stuff?
Had to bring him up.
Oh my God!
And I was just wondering what your relationships were like working
He was
with
all right.
Immaculate.
Immaculate, how do you feel about him?
He was a gent.
Your captain.
He really was.
He was great.
Absolutely. He made those years just about perfect. He really did. Because the guy at the top of the food chain, or the lady, or whoever is at the top, if they're... and some sets are not nice places to be around. They can be quite toxic. And it's a hierarchy, it's an army. And if the guy, girl, lady at the top is wobbly, that wobble all comes all the way down. And it can be really odd. We can all say that. We've
Absolutely.
sets where it's like, just shut up and
Absolutely.
and go home and take the check and be thankful. And thank God for Scotland.
Scott was a
I
champ.
remember the very first episode, the pilot, we all had to be in, I guess it was the second episode, we all had to be in spacesuits. You know, the spacesuits, they weighed about 100 pounds.
They were gnarly
They
suits,
were
man.
miserable sons of bitches.
Yeah.
And I myself could be in one for like 5 minutes before I started mewling like a baby. Scott Bakula, on the final day of like a 3-day shoot, he'd been in the spacesuit every single goddamn day, and the last shot of the day, they pick his helmet off, and he says, I think I maybe can do a little bit better. One more take. So we had a love-hate relationship.
No, you can't. That really, you hit it right there, Scott.
I don't think you can do better than that, Scott. Really don't. Really don't.
He was, when we'd be on location. Do you remember that one time we were shooting out with the Klingons in the Ring of Fire? And we were losing the light for the day, and Scott Bakula is down on his knees in the dirt, laying the track for the dolly shot with the crew. And I was going back to my trailer to watch Judge Judy and have a Coke.
I love Scott Bakula.
Well, guys,
I'd love him a little bit more if I'd been invited to his Christmas party the last 2 years.
He hasn't had one.
I know, he's been in New Orleans working.
But how come we're not on NCIS New Orleans?
I got a question for you, Scott.
Why am I in New Orleans right now?
all right, guys. I want to thank you for kicking things off on the main stage today for Star Trek 50.